Welcome to the Bell Curve. Today we're soaring into the skies of Columbia for a retrospective on BioShock Infinite on the Xbox 360. BioShock Infinite launched in March 2013, 6 years after the original BioShock redefined first-person storytelling on consoles. By the time it arrived, the Xbox 360 was in its twilight years, a seasoned warhorse with Halo 4 in its rearview mirror, the Kinect gathering dust, and the Xbox One waiting impatiently in the wings. Infinite was both a technical showcase and a last hurrah for big-budget single-player games on the system. The story begins in 1912, not beneath the ocean, but high above it. You play as Booker DeWitt, a man with debts, regrets, and a talent for shooting things in the face, sent to the flying city of Columbia to retrieve a mysterious girl named Elizabeth. Booker instead finds himself wading through a floating, Art Deco-tinged theocracy brimming with nationalism, zealotry, and mechanical George Washington automatons that can kill you in seconds. The structure is deceptively simple. Linear corridors stitched together with skylines, Columbia's aerial tram system, punctuated by big set pieces and occasional walk and talk segments. It's a shooter wearing the clothes of an adventure game, with vigors replacing plasmids, and skyline combat lending a rollercoaster flair to gunfights. Development began in earnest around 2008 under Irrational Games, helmed by Ken Levine. While the original BioShock was born from System Shock DNA, Infinite's goal was to create a completely new setting, untethered from Rapture's Art Deco gloom. Early prototypes, some leaked in 2018, showed a much more dynamic world. Elizabeth would react to your actions with changing outfits, Columbia's citizens would go about daily routines, and combat was to be more sandbox-like. Former staff have spoken of scrap mechanics, a songbird morality system, greater player choice and political alignments, and a sprawling city with day-night cycles. As deadlines loomed, the scope narrowed, and Columbia became a string of gloriously decorated shooting galleries. There was also tension between creative ambition and hardware limitations. Levine reportedly rewrote significant portions of the story late in development, including major revisions to the ending, though core multiverse themes remained. The final game still bore scars of these revisions, a few oddly abrupt transitions, cut vigors barely explained, and environments that promised more interaction than they delivered. Let's be blunt, BioShock Infinite is not the second coming in video game form, despite what some breathless 2013 reviews would have you believe. Strengths? Absolutely. The art direction is glorious. There's something intoxicating about the first ascent into Columbia, when the clouds part and the city glides into view, church bells ringing. Elizabeth is one of gaming's most likeable companions, managing to avoid the usual escort mission misery by being functionally immortal and throwing you ammo like an enthusiastic caddie. The skyline combat is fun, if a bit gimmicky, and there's a certain giddy joy in summoning a murder of crows to peck a founding father's eyes out. Weaknesses. The illusion of choice is particularly thick here. You can't even shoot a balloon vendor without the game dragging you back onto the rails. The combat, while mechanically solid, can become wearying. There are only so many ways you can kill a man with a shotgun in a glorious golden hallway before it starts feeling like a museum exhibit on loop. And for all its narrative ambition, Infinite occasionally mistakes shouting its themes very loudly for actually exploring them. BioShock Infinite arrived at a peculiar moment in gaming culture. The industry was still clinging to the cinematic shooter model popularised by Call of Duty 4 in 2007, but audiences were showing signs of fatigue. At the same time, so-called serious games with political and social commentary were gaining traction. Spec Ops: The Line in 2012 had proven that a shooter could criticise its own violence, while indie titles like Papers, Please were testing narrative limits. Infinite tried to straddle both worlds. It wanted to be a blockbuster FPS with impeccable gunplay and a provocative work about American exceptionalism, religion and racism. The result was a strange hybrid that critics adored but some players found tonally inconsistent, like watching a lecture on the dangers of nationalism, then immediately being handed a chain gun to mow down a crowd of zealots. It was also part of a wave of last generation swan songs, games that pushed the 360 and PS3 hardware to their absolute limits before the inevitable shift to Xbox One and PS4. In that sense, it feels a bit like the PlayStation 2's late-era giants, God of War 2, Final Fantasy XII showing off what old silicon could still do. BioShock Infinite on the Xbox 360 is a contradiction in motion, a masterfully presented world hamstrung by mechanical conservatism, a philosophical treatise welded to a shooting gallery. It is both a high point of the 7th console generation and a case study in the compromises that define AAA game development. You remember the opening vistas, Elizabeth's hopeful gaze, and the songbird's mournful cry. You probably forgot the 15th wave of identical enemies you fought in the Hall of Heroes. But that's Infinite in a nutshell. Moments of breathtaking artistry, framed by the practical realities of making a blockbuster in 2013. And like Columbia itself, it's a beautiful place to visit, but you wouldn't want to live there. Which BioShock game in the series is your favourite? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content from the Bell Curve.